All right, 3 tiers of non-customers is one of my favorite tools for this, because one of the best ways you can unlock new value and stop fighting over the same customers is to find people who are not currently customers of the market and make them customers. Not because we are into trucks or car geeks more broadly, so if you're thinking, why are they talking about cars so much? Because it's a great lab for product management, because it's big, ubiquitous, expensive purchases with big visible marketing and long sales cycles and things. So you can learn a lot from that market. So we're going to use trucks as the example for a little while, and electric cars later. So market. So the center circle, you may have noticed, is labeled current market. It is not labeled your current customers. So when we're talking about non-customers here, we're not talking about, like if we were GM, we're not talking about non-customers of GM trucks. We're talking about the market for trucks, pickup trucks in this case specifically. So market would be people who currently buy pickup trucks. So what are some examples of kind of categories or customer jobs, if you're familiar with that, that are in the current market for trucks? Construction, yeah, ranchers. So I use it for my job, whether that's on a ranch or a construction site. What are some other things in that market? Yeah.
It's part of my identity.
Yeah. And there's several flavors of that, right? There's the I have a truck just because I'm a truck person. There's the intersection with the previous one of, like, I'm a construction manager. I don't actually need a truck, but I need to show up at the job site in a truck because then I'm a construction person, even if I show up in dress shoes, but I do it in a truck. What else?
Recreation. I'm hauling something.
Yeah, like hauling my kayaks, hauling my boat, and there's different flavors of that too, like throw things in the bed versus tow something. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think I need a truck, but I really need a car.
What would put somebody there?
Why would they?
Yeah.
People think that they actually need to be able to haul stuff, but they
Okay.
don't.
So I like the idea. Yeah, I like having the option to haul things if I need to. Right. One of the important things when we're defining the market is doing it as empathetically as we can. Because if you could say under your breath after a kind of customer segment in here, the idiot. We haven't found it yet. And so in that case, like from the outside perspective, if they're honest, that's a person who has a truck and never hauls anything. Like, that's kind of silly. If we think of it from what's going on inside their head, they may say, I just like having the option. Like, I know if I need something, I don't have to borrow it from somebody else. Right? What else? Another segment in the current market? Yeah, like it actually is my work to deliver stuff around. Think of any other significant ones we're missing?
That's good.
Yeah, that's pretty good coverage. All right, so let's go to Tier 1 non-customers. And this one may surprise you. So Tier 1 non-customers are in this model called soon-to-be non-customers. You have this on your list already. Soon-to-be non-customers actually are currently customers of the market. So this is somebody who currently has a truck, but they're considering getting out of the market. What might be going on in their head that would make them identify as a Tier 1?
Going back to my example, I have a truck. I never actually use it as a truck.
Yeah.
I don't need to own one.
Yeah.
Right. So I'll often characterize the segments in here as quotes like that. You know, I never really actually use my truck.
For truck things.
As a truck. Right. Nothing ever goes in that bed except sandbags in the winter to keep it from spinning out on the ice.
Richard, we're in
I live in Colorado. Sorry, that's not a thing here. Yeah. What is he talking about? What is ice goes in drinks? What else might put somebody in Tier 1 for trucks? Okay. Yeah, it's not fitting in my garage or my parking space really well. Like that kind of space issue?
Hard to park.
Yeah.
Fuel economy.
Fuel economy and climate. So there's 2 different flavors of this one, right? There's driving a truck around is expensive, which could put somebody in here. Also, I'm feeling kind of guilty about my fuel consumption and its impact on the planet. So those are 2 different segments that could put somebody in Tier 1, right?
Kids.
Yeah, my kids don't fit anymore. I've just got that third kid and their legs don't fit back there or something, or a car seat and 2 kids doesn't work, or something like that. Was there another lifestyle change that might fit? Was it kids? Okay.
Maybe
Be older and retired from construction or whatever.
Yeah, now that I'm older, I think I could use just a car. I don't really need a truck anymore.
My knees are hurting getting up in this thing. Right?
Yeah, yeah. So it's kind of like the I don't really use it as a truck, but it's a different one. I once did. Instead of I went from the idea of I'm a truck person to that. Okay, so that's tier 1. These are interesting because they're about to go into a different market, like they might go into the car market or the electric vehicle market or something like that. And you might be able to come up with some kind of innovation that grabs those before they fall out to some completely other existing market. Let's go to tier 2. Tier 2 is refusing. Tier 2 non-customers would actually know they're non-customers of the market. They've considered it, and they've opted out. So what are some reasons why somebody would be a tier 2 for trucks?
You're not taking my Prius.
Yeah, they're expensive. What about the Prius?
You're not taking my Prius away from me.
Okay, yeah.
Affordable truck drivers.
Because
Yeah.
why would they say you're not taking this away from me?
The planet.
Uh-huh.
I love the planet.
Got it.
Okay.
Got it.
I can meet my needs by putting a tow hitch on my SUV.
Yeah.
I need a car.
So let me give you tier 3. The distinction between the two is sometimes helpful here. Tier 3 is in this model called unexplored. I'll explain what that means. Unexplored. So tier 3 wouldn't even consider it. It's not on their radar. So for most of my life, I have been a tier 3 for trucks. Like when I go to look for a new car, I don't even think about trucks. They're not on my radar. I scroll right past that in the listings. And so the Prius owner who's really fond of the Prius is probably more like that. Like they're not thinking, should I get another Prius or a truck? They're probably just thinking, okay, Prius or Tesla Model 3, or there's going to be comparing like things in a totally different market, electric cars in that case, right?
That's almost a boundary between tier 2 and tier 3. Like they might I don't know, maybe, but I'm considering, like, you could go pretty extreme on this as well and say I'm a native indigenous person that has not encountered technology before. That would be firmly in tier 3, unaware that this would be an option for me, or there aren't roads where I go or gas stations where I live. This would be extreme, but also sometimes helpful to consider those extreme examples. Like, who doesn't even think of trucks or aware that it's an option for them? Or there could be economic factors involved there and why I wouldn't even consider buying a truck. My 6-year-old is a tier 3 non-customer, unaware that this is an option, right?
Yeah.
Take it if you could.
Might, if they were aware of it.
Yeah.
Might not because of the impediments.
And that's kind of the move from 3 into 2 is they're aware of it, they intentionally opt out of it. Yeah, that's not for me. So tier 3 might be I would never even consider a truck, and tier 2 could sound like I thought about it, I need to haul stuff around, but trucks are too much of a gas guzzler, or the performance isn't fun, or that's not going to be great in the snow, which is another cold thing that appears on the ground in some other places and affects driving.
Leftover hail from yesterday. Right?
No, that did look very snow-like, though. That's the closest thing I've seen down here. So my wife is a tier 2 for trucks. She had a truck in high school, actually a big old 1-ton crew cab diesel with a gun rack and naked lady mud flaps. It was the 80s. Yeah, it said Big Jake across the front, and she carried her sheep in it. So we still evaluate cars by how many sheep they can carry. She hasn't had a truck since that one, so it's been a lot of years. But when we think about new cars, she always has this, is it time for a truck? Should I consider it at this stage in my life? Because she still thinks of herself as somebody who could own a truck and thinks about it and then usually rejects it because too many kids to fit in there or bad for the snow or something like that. I'm solidly tier 3, never even consider it. Right? Some interesting value innovations in the truck space have come around in the last couple of years that illustrate what it might look like for somebody who is currently playing in this market that would want to jump out and pull some of these others into that market. And I'll give you a few quick examples. The last night's Tesla truck reveal. Who are they going after?
Tier 3.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to imagine, but yeah, probably tier 3. Probably people who have never even thought about it. They see this thing and they're like, maybe I am a truck person. Because it's almost not in the category. They could also pick up some 2s, perhaps. People who opted out, so they fell from like 1 into 2 because of environmental concerns or performance concerns or something, and now the Tesla option might pull them back into a customer of a truck. A few years ago, I guess 2 years ago now, another electric car startup that just does trucks announced a company called Rivian. They are only going after a particular segment of the non-customers, which is kind of an adventure segment. They have like Alex Honnold as a spokesperson driving around the car, famous rock climber. And it's all about carrying around your outdoor stuff and things like that. So they're probably picking up tier 2s who've rejected it in favor of SUVs or something, right? And potentially tier 1s who might fall out because of environmental concerns. The Ford Raptor. That's something different than innovation and technology. What are they going after in here?
I don't know what it is.
The high performance, sporty
It's
truck.
fast, it
It's-
handles well.
Tier 1.
Yeah, so it could be either of these for kind of different jobs. Could be tier 1, like my truck is really boring to drive. I'm thinking about getting something more fun, keeping the tier 1s. It could be, I never really even consider a truck because their performance and fun driving isn't something I think about. So yeah, there's some there. Probably not picking up some 3s. Right? We're going to give you just a moment to think through this for your market. And just make a few notes under the circles there. Think about what are some of the key segments in your current market for whatever your market is. Who might opt out? Who's considered it but already opted out? Who's not even aware that your market is a thing? 3 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, just a quick pass through this. Get 1 or 2 examples of each. All right. So let's bring it back to one big conversation.
What are some examples? Maybe give us just a little context for your business, for your products. What are some examples of somebody that you put in tier 1, soon to be non-customers? Yeah.
So if we had a TNC policy for Uber or Lyft drivers, because I've been driving for Uber and Lyft, and I decided I no longer want to do that.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So the market is insurance for drivers in that space? Yeah. Okay. What would a tier 2 sound like in that market? And I'm going to see if somebody else can answer this one. Another chance to practice on it. So in the market of insurance for drivers of Ubers and Lyfts and things, what would a tier 2 sound like in there?
Crickets.
So far.
Employee relations. So, I mean, I think any company that's concerned with potential lawsuits against employers on the basis of like discrimination or maltreatment.
Just a woman. You wouldn't want to.
Well, we're talking about insurance companies.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
particularly this insurance.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about insurance.
So this type
Yeah.
of insurance.
So this is the market for insurance for Uber drivers.
Sorry.
Yeah. So it's who would consider insurance for Uber drivers and opt out of that market.
Those that thought that the Uber or Lyft were covering them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Unaware.
I don't need
Yeah.
this. No, they've considered it. I don't need it, so I'm not going to buy my own. Yeah, I'm covered by my employer. The right word? There you go. Yeah. Tier 3. Yeah. Not even considering driving for Uber, so I'm clearly not in that market. Okay. Let's get one more example of a completely different market that we can just get you a few more examples.
find writers to write on our network of sports and entertainment websites.
Okay, so what is the broader market for that?
Raving fans who want to write about their passion.
Okay.
So that's what you're going after now?
Who do you compete with in this market?
SB Nation, other sites that have kind of like freelance or
Gotcha.
side gig opportunities for fans and writers.
Okay, so this is the way into your current market. If you were struggling with what's the market, think about who would I consider my competition? Like, we're going after the same people right now. That would be what you'd define as the market, and then the example you gave, the rabid fan who wants to share their thing, would be somebody who would fit into the target market. So if you were struggling at that stage, that's how to work back into it. Who might be opting out of that market soon?
Miami Dolphin fans.
My experience is that the fan is going to stay in the market
Yep.
because they want to complain about it, and there's going to be more and more clicks, right?
Surprising how those sites generally do better.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So who's currently in the market and they're getting frustrated?
Getting frustrated, maybe they don't think they're getting paid well enough, or they're not getting enough support, or they get a full-time writing job. Maybe that happens.
Mm.
It's not a side gig anymore.
Yeah, so they don't need this side gig. They got something else, another outlet.
Yeah. Good.
All right. Let's take this into strategy.
Any others?
Yeah, yeah, and we could go all the way through, right? So this is good. What we want to do is now transition into the other side of this, which is how we think strategically about things. And to do that, we've developed this kind of canvas layout for thinking about strategy, which you'll see on the next page. And the next page has essentially taken Tesla as a company and turned it into a map of their strategy. We didn't make it up, this strategy. In 2006, Tesla was about to announce their first car. In fact, had just announced their first car, which was called the Roadster back in 2006. It wasn't in production yet. They had just done the same kind of thing that they did last night. Like, here's the live stream, here's the rollout, here's the prototype.
They didn't break it on stage that time, though.
They didn't break it on stage. The mission statement of Tesla Motors in 2006 was accelerate the mass market adoption of sustainable transportation. That was the mission of the company. And the first car that they announced, their first product, was a 2-seat sports car that was going to be priced around $150,000, and they were expecting a total production run of somewhere in the neighborhood of 4,000 cars. And so somebody tweeted at Elon Musk, the CEO, to say, hey, Elon, way to go with that mass market adoption of sustainable transportation. I'm sure you're going to make a big impact on the environment when 4,000 rich dudes buy your car. Right? So a little bit of a knock on, are you really on mission here? Because we thought this was about mass market adoption, and you're just giving us, like, only a few people a really expensive car. So is it mass market if you're in the elite? Okay, right? So Musk, being who he is, which is sometimes reactive to criticism, he responded by writing an article on Tesla's website called The Super Secret Master Plan of Tesla Motors, Just Between You and Me. And then he proceeded to lay out the strategy of the company over the next 10 years. And as he laid it out, he essentially was trying to make the case that this Roadster, this really expensive, short-run, 2-seat car, is a step towards that mission statement. So we wanted to explain the steps because people weren't able to connect the dots. And as he explained this, he said, look, the Roadster it's expensive. Yeah, only a few people are going to get it. But here's the plan. There hasn't been a new automaker in the United States in like 70 years. It's a really hard market to break and be successful in. And so we're thinking strategically about this. So the most risky thing we can think of with an electric car that we want to have mass market adoption is we got to make it cool. We got to make electric cars cool. So if we rewind to 2006, some of you might remember what electric cars looked like prior to the Roadster. They were like rounder golf carts. They were not cool looking. They didn't have very good range. For some reason, they didn't take advantage of the inherent performance boost that you get from an electric motor. They have great torque. Even if you get in a golf cart and you hit that pedal hard enough, it'll jerk you back, right? So he wanted to prove, in fact, he felt like he needed to prove that electric cars could be cool. And so what they did is they built the Roadster essentially to create buzz, to start to shift the perception of what an electric car is in the market. And that was just step one. And then he went on for several paragraphs to explain that, yes, while it's not changing the carbon footprint of the auto industry, if you buy this first car, you will become either carbon neutral or carbon positive if you combine it with solar panels. And then he goes on with a little sales pitch for Solar City, right? So if you have the Roadster and solar panels, you'll be carbon positive. So is that a huge impact? No. But at least at step one, we're making a minor impact. And he says, essentially what we're doing is rolling all the funds that we get, all the revenue from those sports cars, into the next step. And the next step, what's most important for us to solve is, we actually have to be able to design these in-house. Because here was the thing about the Roadster. It was another car. It was a Lotus Elise, a little British sports car company that was making this cool, fun-to-drive, two-seat sporty car. And they just licensed it. They licensed the body, the chassis, and put an electric motor in it. And so that's a great agile way to get to a proof of concept that can sell faster, a true minimum viable product, right? Is it viable? Will people pay for it? And then they basically fund step two with that. And step two, they need to figure out, can we design these things in-house and build them all in-house? And he described that one as going after a different market. This is going after people that might buy a high-end German car, a BMW, a Mercedes, something like this. And then that's going to give us more funds. And people that buy that second car will also be carbon positive. So we're making a bigger impact at step two. And that funds the third step, which he said the third step is where we get to start to hit that mass market adoption. And so each of these stepwise get us to our mission statement. So he laid out the strategy of the company in 2006. Stayed pretty close to that strategy, right? It's not always the case. We think strategically because we want to make sure, does this even make sense logically? If all those proof points turn out to be positive, then we go to the next step. Then we go to the next step. So it's one of the few examples we have of a public company sharing their strategy. Usually that's held pretty tight to the vest, right? So if you look at the Canvas example here, the top three boxes are kind of stepwise steps.
There's like this.
Yep, step one, step two, step three.
Is it always three?
No, that was their strategy. They had 3 steps towards success for our mission or vision. But it's pretty common we see 5 steps, or 4, or 2 sometimes, right? There's 1 step and then a big step and we're there. If you've got 15 steps, you may be overthinking and planning the future towards a mission statement.
That may look more like a roadmap than a strategy, and it's probably not very accurate anyway. Yeah. So we're zooming out and thinking big, bold moves.
So you almost think of lanes, like step 1, step 2, step 3, and then we're looking at it through 2 lenses. 1, who's the market? Who are we going after? Over on the right-hand side, what are we offering for them that causes them to buy or adopt our product? In the middle, doing this step. So what was the riskiest thing Tesla needed to learn by doing their step 1?
Can they make something cool?
Can they make electric cars cool? Can we shift the perception? Right? Because if they had gone to scaling up whole production lines and sales networks first, right? We need to build out the capability to mass produce cars first. And then they deliver their first car, and it's not cool. That's a huge waste of investment, right? So we wanted to test this first. Like, is there a product market fit here? Can we start to shift the perception of electric cars?
So notice that if we go back to this one, the buyers of the Tesla Roadster were not in the existing market for electric cars. They would not have bought the bubbly, slow GM EV1. Well, nobody could buy those because GM wouldn't sell them to you. they would lease them for a short time because they wanted to take them back and destroy them. There are like 2 in museums today because of that. The current market for electric cars, Tesla didn't go take on this market and fight with GM for the same people. Instead, they went to probably people out here who rejected it and said, those just aren't fun. I like my cars to be fun and interesting and cool and all that. They went straight around the current market. Now, they've worked their way back in, right? By step 3, they're directly competing with the rest of the market. But they went like the hard to get people and worked their way back in and built scale from the other direction, which is a really interesting strategy. And I've seen this work with a lot of our clients as well.
And I would say that even some of their market was tier 3. That didn't even know electric cars were a thing, right? But if you look at who's buying a Tesla Roadster at 150 grand, it's a pretty wealthy segment. It's a wealthy segment that probably has multiple cars, and this is one of their fun toys. And so that's the segment they're going after. And it's a specific part of that segment, those ones that also want to have a more positive impact on the environment and or be viewed as having a more positive impact on the environment. Right? So it's an interesting segment there.
Let me give a concrete example from a market that may be familiar, or industry that may be familiar to more of you. One of our clients is in the software space. They have a product that appeals to small businesses in their market. They wanted to move it to the cloud, as many companies do. Take their legacy product, rewrite it, because we like rewriting things, to make them right this time. Rewrites tend to fail, of course, because, well, lots of reasons, but they seem like they're going to go pretty smoothly. Like, just make it do what the existing system does on a new technology with new people, shorter timeline and budget. All the new things we think of along the way, the reasons we wanted to change it. And by the way, some of the things the existing system does that are wrong are actually right now because people integrate with them and they've become hidden requirements. With a nice, elegant strategy to replace their existing system with one in the cloud. Instead of kind of doing it all in place for the existing market, they went out here, or actually probably out here, to an enterprise segment that wasn't even considering their market. And said, we're going to solve that problem, but as we solve that problem, we're going to slowly build back in the features that would allow our existing customers to switch over to the new product. And so this can be a strategy, even if it's not about a totally new product or something. If it's about a new technology for an existing product, they use that to get new customers and use the new customers to essentially fund the rewrite onto the new technology so then they can kill the old one. I thought that was a really elegant and maybe more relevant strategy for many of your companies.
Yeah. So if we jump back to the canvas here, we can see that pattern here as well, right? Is that Tesla was doing the same thing, working their way back. And so one of the characteristics you'll see in these is there's almost a little pyramid shape to them. Small market initially. As the software companies started to find those enterprise clients, there's probably a few of them that they could go after. But then as they work their way back, now there are more customers. We expand into an additional segment. That's what Tesla did here. And you can see this on the canvas, that they went from people that are maybe buying Porsches to people that are buying BMWs. It's a bigger market. And they have different needs, right? The job that a Tesla Roadster did for that market is different from the job that what became the Model S did for that market. So the Model S is a bigger car. It seats up to 7 people. It has a longer range. And one of the reasons they did those things is because if they didn't do those things, they weren't going to capture the next market. So now this isn't my 5th car. It's maybe my 1st or 2nd car. Now it's not the thing I take out on short weekend trips or tooling around for nights on the town. Now it's something I might take my family on a road trip for. And because that's a different market, they have different needs from the product. And one of those needs is that I need to be able to take a long family trip. What might a buyer of an electric car, 7, 8 years ago, be concerned about with long road trips? The car dying. There's a battery on this thing, and there aren't battery stations everywhere, right? And so the offering for step 2, if you look on the right box, is not just the Model S, it's the Model S with the supercharger network. Because in order to meet the needs of that customer, they also had to do this thing. And really the thing that they needed to prove there, in addition to, is this product viable with this segment, with this new segment, is they're making a internal choice here, which is we're not going to always license somebody else's car here. Now, as we go more broad in the market, we probably need to design it and build it in-house. And that was probably the riskiest part of that move for them. I think they felt pretty confident now that they could deliver a cool car that would get some buzz and that would get people excited about it. The riskier thing now is, can we design and build it ourselves? So the key thing they needed to test in the learning column here is, can we design and build this thing all ourselves? Then finally, they're moving back in market because now they're going directly after the reddest ocean in the car market, which is people that might be considering say a Honda Accord. It's really my daily driver. It needs to be efficient. It needs to be inexpensive, and you can see the price drop as you go from market to market as well in this example. And at that point, they needed to essentially answer the question, can we build this thing at scale and at such an economy of scale that we can have a viable business around it? Right? Tesla wasn't profitable until the third product, the third step here. They weren't actually making profits until the Model 3. So that's when they're testing the business model actually works. We can build, manufacture, supply chain, sell, deliver at scale, at quantity, that we can actually be profitable. So they went all the way to step 3 before they got there. So those are the top 3 columns, kind of stepwise. The other columns we added as kind of a check and balance on a couple of things. The column on the left is kind of the theory of impact here. Remember, the impact that Tesla was hoping to make in the world was related to sustainable transportation. And we started thinking about these boxes as like a flywheel concept. Some of you might have heard of the flywheel concept from Good to Great by Jim Collins, this idea that there's this inevitable logic to how our business works, that if we do this well, inevitably this next thing will happen, and then that will cause this next thing to happen. And then there's an increasing like weight to that flywheel, and it gets easier and easier to turn as long as the logic stays the same. And so we want to have that logic of the impact, the theory of impact. For the Tesla one, it's pretty straightforward. That first segment that buys our car has carbon positive impact on the world. So we make a small impact. And if we do that well, then it creates a desire in the next market for this. And if we do that, that makes a bigger impact on the environment. And if we do that well, then the next market starts to get excited about buying this car because now it's in my price range and it does the jobs I care about. And so now that has an even bigger impact on the environment, and it's this flywheel of an increasing impact at every step. We don't skip on impact even at step 1.
This is really different from many strategies we see that are like, we're going to build a bunch of things, and they're useful for us to move towards it, but we're not actually achieving our impact until suddenly we finally do. We're trying to think about how can you make that ramp up. There may be some acceleration of it, and that's kind of the flywheel thing. But there should be some, even at this step, we're not just doing a prototype so we can learn something. We're doing something that begins to achieve the impact, maybe in a tiny target market, and then more, and then more.
Then on the right-hand side, there's the business side of that, kind of the economic theory or the business theory of impact, and that's a flywheel as well. And again, the Tesla example is a pretty simple one of this. Right? We take all the funds we get from step 1, roll it into step 2, attract new investors because of the success there. We take all the funds from step 2, roll that into R&D for step 3, and attract new investors there. And if we do that well, then there's a business growth. There's a flywheel of business growth as well. So these two flywheels complementing each other around, we're making an impact on the purpose we care about, and we're growing the business success so that they can support each other, right?
This too is the opposite of what many companies do, particularly startups with external funding, where they'll start with a free or cheap product for a mass segment, and then they'll try to move up into a higher end segment. Notice that Tesla did the opposite of that. They started with non-customers who were willing to pay for the thing, and then they used that to fund the mass product. And I think that direction is much more the way to make a sustainable business.
So you have all of that kind of written out. Almost everything that you see in this strategy canvas example from Tesla is copy paste out of that document that Musk wrote, right? So it's essentially visualizing that in a way that we understand the logic of the strategy. So what we want to do is give you a chance to think through what would a canvas look like for your market. And if you had some insights into those different tiers, one way you can think about it is, could we jump to tier 2 or 3 for step 1 in the canvas, then expand back into the next tier, and then expand back into this tier? Or are we going to go after this first? And so both the blue ocean, the idea of different non-customers, and the strategy canvas go really well together because you can map the different non-customers in there.
If you don't want to play with your own, maybe you don't have a product that you're currently working on or something, we've given you a hypothetical one at the top of that page 3 that is a realistic kind of product. We're in the middle of something has already been released with this company, and we're thinking about our strategy from here. So you could also take this and play with that.
And what we'd like you to do is work on one of those 2 options with somebody near you. So if you got somebody from your company with you, you can work on your own. If not, you can work on our hypothetical example of this product that we both wish somebody would actually build. So feel free to steal it and actually develop it. And see what that might look like. Now, you probably won't get a full canvas filled out, in 5-10 minutes, but see what step 1 might be. So here would be my order that I would work through this. Step 1, theory of impact, business model, and then see what step 2 and step 3 might look like. And you can jump around and iterate on it and let it go where you're led. But what we'd like you to do is get a chance just to play with the model a little bit to help us understand it. So let's take 5 minutes at the tables and work through either of those options. And if you get stuck, put your hand up, and we'll weave our way over to you and see if we can help you get unstuck. Okay, it's a total of 5 minutes to play with the model a little bit.
So quick question, is this initial, we did the practice. Is this step 1?
It's
so
the,
they release
think of
something out there, they're
right.
reaching out to that market. Is this really stage 1?
So you can think of step 1 being the next step.
But if you like, if it's helpful to you to model how we got here, you could have previous steps, and you could say, we're currently at step 2. I've never done one that way, but that actually makes a lot of sense now that you bring it up. We learned this thing, and now we're ready to learn this next thing and expand to this target market. So you could take it as from here, or you could take it as how did we get here, and we're at step 2 or 3 right now.
And then I'm just interested, because we just hit a wall. Did anybody hit step 2? What did they?
Where'd they go?
Yeah. What was step 2?
So you talked about it a little bit, right? And this as a thing, right? I relate it back to a couple of years ago, Steve Nash was partnered with, and I forget the company. They have an iOS app, but it's for basketball teams, and it does or individuals, and it records all your shots, and you can see the videos, the performance, right? The statistics. And I didn't really view this as like something that you'd sell to parents, but you'd sell it to like the music teacher or the coach, and then they would then provide that as a thing to the students or to the parents to show the value that they're creating in their child.
So if we were to model it the way that was suggested by this approach, we could have put the existing step in there as step 1, and we're really going after parents. That's who would pay for it. Parents who have these needs, and we would create this offering to meet those needs. And we really need to learn something about adoption and usability, or whatever we need to learn at that step. And then step 2, the user, the market we're going after there, might be coaches and tutors. And they need a different set of features to meet their needs. And at that one, we really need to learn, what's the right pricing model or business model for those ones. Is it a cut? Is it a referral? What is it, right? So you might have that be the second step.
Now, your first step doesn't always work. You might have said, we'll start out by selling this thing to parents, and you discover that most parents don't even know they need that thing, except certain parents who are themselves musicians or teachers or something and know that it's important. So that wasn't a very interesting market. So then you might say, what's a segment that has particularly engaged parents or something? And go, let's just go after the Suzuki violin teachers who interact with the parents in every lesson. All right, now we've got a segment that might test the hypothesis that we could use it there.
What other questions or ahas did you have as you worked through this?
It's kind of the monetization of it. It's like, so, you know, and parents aren't gonna wanna pay for something, the kids don't have money. So, you know, there'd have to be some kind of angle that would like sell the marketing of, you know, the service to coaches, to people whose profession it is. So this is-
Or the teacher's angle, yeah.
So like, how would this help them in commercializing or
Right.
carrying the message of whatever goodness it is that they want to, you know, like share with the world? But I couldn't come up with a good way to like.
I think that's an important example of, like the way I mentioned, the typical startup business model is the opposite of what we're talking about here, where, well, we'll just get parents using it for free, and then it's like the South Park Underpants Gnomes episode, where they had like the steal the underpants was step 1 in the strategy, step 3 is profit, step 2 is ellipses. Like, you don't really know how you get from here to here, and a lot of startups are in that place where we're going to do this thing and lots of people will use it and we'll lose money on every one, but we'll make up for it in volume. And then eventually a business model will pop out. So as you think about your different segments, if you're modeling your non-customers, you're not just looking for one that's unreached right now. You're also looking for one that has some kind of significant unmet need and means to pay you to meet it. And so the teachers may be a more interesting segment, and particularly teachers in a discipline that is particularly concerned about practice. Like, that's why the Suzuki violin example came to mind. But there's probably others.
You said an important thing there, which is that the parents aren't going to want to pay for this.
No.
And the truth is, no human wants to pay for anything.
Yeah.
But the reason we pay for it is because the value we receive from it is greater than the value of the money going out, right? And the whole idea of, it's kind of a separate topic, but this idea of, are we actually going after customer jobs that are painful, meaningful, important to people? As soon as you cross a line there, now I'm willing to exchange value for it. I'm willing to hand over my cash. I'm not happy that I have to pay for anything. If you gave it to me for free, I'd be happier. Yeah. But I'm willing to, right?
Right. Nobody wants our products.
Yeah.
They want what they want, and they enlist the help of our products. So we need somebody who wants a thing that they're not getting and help them with it.
So then if we go back to this Canvas and the Tesla example, there's actually 2 things in the learning.
In step 2, for sure.
You've got the internal stuff here,
yes,
right? What are we learned? Can we do it? Can we deliver? But there's also the,
Will
does the
people buy
market,
it?
you know, do rich people really want to buy this thing?
Yes.
Or, you know,
There's
are we right
yeah.
about that first assumption?
It's a pretty high level summary of this Canvas,
Yeah.
but we often have internal learning and external learning. Are we capable? There's risk of our capability of delivering or discovering these things, and there's a risk of market adoption of these things. So there's a little bit of both of those at each step.
So that raises a question that's probably worth answering, which is, out of all the things you're going to learn at each step, which ones do you highlight as part of your strategy? Because there's going to be many of them at every step, and roughly the way we think about that is, what are the critical assumptions that you're making that if this fails, the next thing doesn't work? So if they could sell a lot of them, but they weren't fun, maybe that doesn't actually cause them to continue.
If they could make an offer, a lot of them, not sell, but if they could make an offer and nobody buys it.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it. Yeah, so out of all the things we learn, which one is, if this isn't true, don't move on, or don't move on that direction? Those are the ones we'll specifically highlight here. And there could be more than one. Like at step 2, there's the charging network one, as well as the can we make a whole car one. But there's also implicitly the will people buy cars like this?
Yeah, is it?
Yeah, that isn't listed there, but based on the assumption that, or sort of the evidence that people buy like mid-tier BMWs and Lexuses and things like that, there seems to be a market for cars in that price range that do those jobs. So that was a less risky assumption for them.
You can think of those as adjacent markets.
Yeah.
If we prove it in this market that's kind of like that one, but that has different needs, we're a little more confident in the next one. It's still an assumption, it's still a risk.
Yeah, we had a hand over here a moment ago.
I may be off base, but in the example you gave us, this app, if it had enough market utility for music teachers, you know, instructors of various kinds, you could put ads on the app.
Right.
And so there's where you get your money.
And so you could have different options for what goes in that bottom right box. What's the business flywheel here, right? Ad support leads to more like leads to this, leads to that, leads to that, right?
Yeah.
So whatever business model choice you make, we just want to describe the thinking behind it so that we don't have the ellipsis at step 2.
Yeah.
Right?
And a lot of times the questions you're answering here and then what you consider successful are misaligned. Like, you may be behaving like we're successful if people use it, but the question you're trying to answer is actually, will people pay for this thing? That requires a different experiment, a different step, maybe even a different market. All right, we are at the bottom of the hour here, which is the end of our time. We will stick around for a few minutes. We're happy to answer more questions. Thanks for being here.